Good evening. How are you tonight? It's 10 o'clock. It's getting kind of late here in the Midwest. But I had a showing tonight, so I had to kind of go do that. I didn't have time to prepare for the live stream, but I'll have you know that I have prepared, and now we're going to do it. We have a lot of good topics tonight, I think. We're going to talk about Elon Musk. We're going to talk about the showing that I had, the house, what people actually pay for things, which is amazing. We're going to talk about the debt ceiling in kind of an odd way. There was an editorial written in Forbes, and I wanted to go over that with you because I think it's absolutely ridiculous. We're going to talk about some tweets. We're going to read some tweets. I mean, I don't know. We'll talk about them too, I guess. But that's going to be the show. If that sounds like something they might be interested in, you should probably stick around. If it doesn't, then that's not so good because I need subscribers and viewers to make this go. Let me write a little hello to the people in the chat, which there usually aren't any, so it's not really a problem. But at least it's there. I think the best way to go now with that nasty pause, my transitions ever since I've come back are pretty terrible, and I don't know why. It doesn't seem like it'd be that difficult, but they're awful. Having been gone for a month, my YouTube metrics are in the toilet. I mean, they're terrible. I don't know about, I hit the wrong button for Rumble, so I don't know what's going on there. But, yeah, they're terrible. The hours watched, I mean, just everything. And that kind of, I mean, since there aren't that many people here, that just begs the question. It's like, John, do you talk about things that you're not really all that interested in, but that get the clicks? Like, for instance, if I write anything about California, okay, in my, if I do anything about California in my live stream, I get way more views than if I do something about like Missouri. If I do something about New York City, I'll get way more views. But at the same time, I'm not in New York. I don't really feel like I'm qualified to talk about New York real estate when I'm in St. Louis. I've been in the state of New York. I don't know if I've been to New York City. I don't think I have. So anyway, there's that. And yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just keep going, and it's nice to be back. It's nice to have a space where I can talk about things that happen, you know, during my real estate career. Let me go over like who I am, because some of you may not know. My name is John Schenk. I'm the founder and managing broker for Deerwood Realty in St. Louis, Missouri. We're a small residential firm. It's so small, it's just me. And now I typically do the Deerwood Realty live stream, where we go over kind of pop culture and real estate and how they all kind of mix. And then I go to bed. And then I don't know what you do. But yeah, that's about it. I think that means we should probably get into the first topic. And the first topic tonight is going to be, I showed a house tonight. Now, we know that house prices are expensive. We know that you know, the market is just stupid. But I also just feel like, I just feel it in my bones. I don't have anything to show you yet, but I just feel like the market, at least where I'm at, is cooling on the sales side. And what do I mean by that? I mean, people that were putting stupid prices on things are starting to not get those prices, and they're starting to have their properties sit. I'll give you two examples. One, there's a house in my neighborhood that is just going to sit because it was priced ridiculous. It's priced probably $50,000 to $60,000 more than what it was worth. And then tonight, I just looked at a $500,000 house that I think sold for maybe $200,000 3 or 4 years ago. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So let's go over the showing. I got there early, and I walked around the backyard, and I don't remember. That's what I did. So I finally, I just remembered it as we were talking, but the buyers hadn't gotten there yet, and so I was walking around in the back to see if I could get in the garage, because oftentimes there will be, like, everyone will pack their stuff in the garage, and so they'll lock it so you can't see what's inside the garage. Other times the key will be the same key as the front door, and so I kind of want to know that ahead of time, because I don't want to have to I don't want to walk through the house, then go get the key out of the front door. I normally leave the key in the front door, so I remember to not put it in my pocket when I'm leaving. But anyway, I go to the back. I go to the garage. There's nothing in the garage. I open the door. There's no. It's not locked, and that's fine. And so then I noticed some black stuff on my hands, and I was like, yeah. So with that, I just see something weird on my other screen. With that, I was like, oh, that's weird. Not, like, the last thing you want to do is, like, pick your face or scratch your nose or something when you have black stuff on your hands, because then it's going to look silly. So I went back to the car and I wiped the black stuff off my hands, and then now I realized it was paint from the door. It took me this long to figure it out. So buyers got there. We walked in. When we walked in, and I kid you, like, this is the real estate game. So we walk in. First of all, you're on a busy street. Second of all, there's a bus stop in front of the house. Now, you may think that that's a good thing. Some people like public transportation and whatnot. Other people might find it annoying that there's people lined up in front of your house every day. They might find that to be not. It certainly doesn't seem to me that would deserve a premium for pricing. Two things that don't. I mean, you're on a main street, like, that's busy, limited parking, and now you've got a bus stop in front of your house. So these are the things in the Midwest that I don't find, at least in St. Louis, that would not warrant, say, another house down the street that wasn't on the main street, that didn't have a bus stop. That would get a higher price if they were the exact same. But we walk in, and like, the floor, it's got, like, these dead bugs all over the place, okay, in the foyer. And then there's a closet for the coats. They're all over that. Like, this to me is like a faux pas from the listing agent. Why would you have that as the first thing you walk in the house? You've got dead bugs all over the place. And you may say, well, the listing agent didn't know. It's the listing agent's job to go to that house, their listing, and check on the house. This is the way I see it. You may think of it differently. I don't know what you think you're paying your listing agent for, but if there's no one at the house, if it's not occupied, then the listing agent better know exactly what's going on at that house all the time, because if it doesn't show well, they're not going to be able to sell the house. In a normal market, now, I mean, anything goes, right? So then I noticed right away there was a little pinhole camera staring right at me when I opened the door, and this isn't unusual to be recorded in 2023 when you're walking through a house. And so I've always counseled my buyers, keep your mouth shut. Let's not talk about any sort of negotiations. Let's try not to throw shade at the seller, even if they've got stupid things in the house. It obviously isn't going to help if you want to buy the house to have said a whole bunch of terrible things about the house while you were in it. And I've seen buyers, I've seen sellers just say, I don't like this person. I don't want them in my house. I'm not selling to them. It's not always logical, is what I'm trying to tell you. It's not obvious the way sellers are going to react to your comments. So anyway, I saw in the disclosures that there were what we call piers installed in the basement. To me, anytime there's piers in the basement, I just kind of, I can always find another house without them. But other people are fine with it. So anyway, we went through, and I wanted to check my notes just for any of the other things that kind of stuck out at me. We got we got upstairs, okay, into one of the bedrooms, and it was the master bedroom basically. But the thing that was so wild was there was no door to the bathroom. buyers were instantly like, nope. I was like, you could put a door in, and they're like, nope, nope. So understand that this was in St. Louis. This was the asking price is over $500,000. In fact, they dropped the price from almost $600,000 to they've made a $100,000 price cut. Now, why anyone thought this house was worth that money, I have no idea. Let me give you an example. The kitchen, it had vibes from the 80s in it, and actually most of the house was like, the people that lived there last were not old people. It wasn't like they died in the house. They were just not good at updating anything. They bought the house and it wasn't updated, and so they just figured everybody else would like that too. But I feel like we've moved on. So in the kitchen, for example, you had a Thermador oven, double oven with microwave. Okay, well that's stainless steel appliance. That was nice, right? That was an upgrade. But then you had a 1980s style Whirlpool dishwasher. You had a 1980s style trash compactor, also white and also Whirlpool. And then you had the refrigerator, the same, and it was a small refrigerator in a small kitchen. This just isn't like, it isn't a $500,000 house on any day of the week if you just look at the appliances alone in the kitchen. And most people buy houses based on the kitchen and the bathrooms. And so you had one good bathroom. The other bathroom was, dated and didn't make any sense. And so I think it was right for the market to say, look, no one's going to spend this money for this house. This is ridiculous. And if they've turned down offers for offers in that range, they should call those agents back and say, hey, I'm sorry. Would you buyers have any interest in actually writing now? Because we were totally wrong and we're sorry. And I drove my wife to work this morning, and we got into an interesting discussion. I'd be interested to see what you guys think. I've always thought of myself in the real estate space, at least as an agent, I've always thought of myself as looking out for the interests of my buyers who otherwise wouldn't have any idea what the hell they're looking at. That is to say, some buyers will say like, oh, look at the pretty kitchen, but they won't notice that the roof is 30 years old, all the systems are bad, there might be a plumbing issue. They don't look at these things. They just look at the kitchen and they say, oh my God, we have to buy this house. Now, my wife is of the opinion like, it's their house. They should buy whatever they want. And I'm of the opinion, yes, but they should know what they're getting themselves into. As an example, earlier this year, I helped a young couple who'd never bought a house on their own buy the first starter home. And it took us a little while to find a home, even for the most part, because everything was ridiculously overpriced and poorly. There were issues on the houses that weren't. But when we went, in South City, for instance, like I said, pay attention to the basement because it could leak. And it's okay if it does leak, but you need to know that ahead of time. And you may say, well, John, that's on the disclosures. It's not a big deal. But, people don't read disclosures. And people sellers lie on disclosures all the time. And so, my wife is like, let them buy the house if they want to buy the house. The fact that it's on a busy street, the fact that it's massively overpriced, the fact that there's piers in the basement, the fact that it's dated. It's not your problem, John. If they want to buy the house, let them buy the house. And I don't agree with that. I just don't agree with that. As far as letting them buy the house, fine. But I want them to be aware of the issues with the home and why the pricing is off, in my opinion. Why would you hire a real estate agent as a buyer's agent if they just said yes to everything? Like, oh, this is a great house, you should buy it. How much should we pay for it? Oh, we should, as much as you possibly can. And yet, I know that's what happens. And I always wondered, am I the only one? And as I look back on my career, it's been going on a while now. It's about 10 years at least, 10 to 15 years. The first house my buyer bought with Deerwood Realty, they don't remember the negotiation. They have no idea. They don't remember any of the fighting. They don't remember any of it. And so then the question is was it worth it? Well, those new buyers I was telling you about, where I was worried about them buying a house with a basement that leaked and they weren't aware of it, they called me 2 nights ago, or maybe Sunday night, and said, "Hey, John, I just want to let you know that our basement did leak with this last rainstorm. Thank you for letting us know it would, and we're just letting you know that we are fine, and we see what's going on, and it's no problem." And that's all I want. I feel like when I bought my house, I was not a real estate agent, and one of the things that kind of stuck out at me is we made an offer on the house, and then they had done enamel to the tubs, but I didn't even open what are those things? The curtains, the shower curtains. I didn't even look, because what difference does it make? One of the bathrooms I wasn't going to use anyway, and the other bathroom, it had the shades, it had the shower closed, and so I didn't think anything of it. Well, when we walked through the day before we bought the house, like, you saw all this enamel coming off of the tubs, and they're ugly and terrible, and I still have them. I don't know. Gosh, I don't know how long it's been, but I've got them, and it's embarrassing. How did my agent let me buy a house that had this problem? No, the truth is he didn't know either, because he didn't open the shower. Now you say, well, during the inspection you had to know. I don't know if I did or not. And I don't mean that as a I don't. I mean, it is what it is. But I'd be interested to know what you guys think. When you want to go buy a house, do you just want to, buy the first thing you see and pay as much as you possibly have to pay to get it, or would you like to try and find value in any marketplace? Because there is always value. I can show you it. We can find it. So that was the showing. Came home. My wife had started dinner for me. And then I finished off. It was steaks, a reverse sear steak. Have you ever looked that up and tried it? It is fantastic. Unfortunately, after eating, I feel like napping now. So, anyway, that was that. I'm trying to figure out. There's one thing that's screwed up. Let me see. I have this red thing. Okay, good. It was messed up. So now I got it fixed. So anyway, that was my showing. Let me know what you think. And we'll move on with crappy transitions, because for some reason I guess I've got it in my head that I can't do transitions now, and so I'm going to keep doing it. So obviously one of the things I want to look at tonight is the rates. Mortgage rates are, like the number one thing. Can you see the rates now? Let me just double check and make sure. Oh, I don't like that one. Okay. The mortgage rates today, 6.70 on a fix. That's the survey, a 30-year fix. Now it's up 1 basis point from yesterday. That doesn't seem like much. 6.69 to 6.70. I don't think it's that much of an increase. But at the same time, look, you need interest rates to be at a decent number because of affordability concerns. And, the Fed has got us in this spot where, we had 3% interest or 3% mortgage rates for so long that people are now not interested in selling their homes, and the things that are available are so overpriced that it's just terrible. And the only things coming to market are mostly people who are estates, or people that just want to get out of an investment, a bad one. It's not like real good inventory, because those people that would normally buy another house are looking around and saying, I can't get half of what I got for this house, or what I have in this house, if I go look for a new place. And so, we're locked into a spot. Now, some people have speculated that the Fed will pause and then begin to lower their rates. But if they do that, that the market will all of a sudden spring back to life. I don't know if that's the case, but I don't know if that's a good thing either. For me, if we could just have some stability. I mean, the Fed's mandate is supposed to be price stability, and they're doing a terrible job. I mean, they caused most of the booms and most of the busts in our economy because the information they look at is lagging. I always believe that there's a lag in the amount of time, and they never seem to account for it. And so when they're busy, tightening rates because the economy is just going crazy, the economy's underpinnings are hurting, and they just miss basically. So if you ask me if I had a crystal ball, you say, John, where do you want the rates to be? I want them to be 5.5%. I think that money has to have some value. That is, like, if someone's going to lend you like $1, okay, there's got to be something to that. It's got to be worth something. And when you have it like it's worth 2%, you don't get anywhere. This is the way I think. I could be wrong. Anyway, that's the rates. Now let's get into our fun article today. I'm just gonna preface it real quick. I'll put that there. Now, look, I'm just telling you a little bit about who I am. I know that people have issues with capitalism. That is, if you're at the bottom rung of the capitalistic society, you are not in good shape, okay? You are miserable. And when somebody tells you, like, say you're working a job and somebody tells you, well, you just have to work harder or your skills aren't valuable and that's why no one's paying you, I get it, okay? To me, there's a difference between crony capitalism and capitalism. And so what we have in the United States is basically crony capitalism at this point. The government writes all of its laws at the behest of business or to favor big business. For instance, you just have to look at the Pfizer, Moderna agreements with the government to see how that worked out. There may have been other treatments for different diseases, but that were cheaper and were generic, but we couldn't use those because the government agreed to only use these particular manufacturers. I could go on and on. If you look at the military-industrial complex, how many wars and how many missiles do we lob at humans around the world in order to pay for, in order to help the defense contractors out? It's pretty ridiculous. So my belief is that the government should be always trying to set the rules, and those rules should be fair for capitalism. They haven't done that. I don't know when the last time was that they did, but that is their job. And so what we have now is just like crony capitalism. It's a disaster. But the alternative to me is not socialism. Everyone being poor doesn't seem to make things better to me. And so I just wanted to go over this article. I thought this was kind of interesting. And I'm not trying to dunk on anybody. I'm not proud of what happened. But let's see here. Okay. You see it says we'll go over the article. It says anti-capitalist pay what you can cafe in Toronto closes after 1 year in business. Now, a lot of people are like, ha ha ha, they're stupid. They lost their business. And I don't really think that way. Having run multiple and started multiple businesses, having to be on that razor's edge of, trying to get noticed for something, for marketing purposes, and yet trying to be true to yourself, having to fire people, none of this stuff is great. Okay. So I'm not happy that the business closed. I just want to make that clear up front. At the same time, I mean, I don't feel like people understand human nature enough, people pay less for things when they can. How many times have you seen a product online at a retail store and then gone and checked Amazon to see if you could get it cheaper? It's right where we're at. It says a self-described anti-capitalist cafe and coffee shop in Canada named The Anarchist with a pay-what-you-can business model will close at the end of the month just after over a year in business. Now, look, I have a policy in St. Louis. I do not eat at restaurants that aren't open for longer than a year. Why? Because most restaurants fail within the first year. And when they do fail, it's because they don't have any money. And so their quality of food goes to hell because they can't afford to buy the good food. They buy garbage, and then they can't afford to pay the chef. And so the chef is terrible, or the cook is terrible. And it's just bad. So that's why I wait for a year. Now, so this business didn't make it a year. That's okay. It says the Toronto shop, which opened in March of 2022, will close on May 30th, its owner announced in a statement, blaming a lack of generational wealth, seed capital from ethically bankrupt sources. A lack of generational wealth, seed capital from ethically bankrupt sources. It says the cafe offered a drip coffee to customers with a pay-what-you-can price tag while charging for other beverages like espresso and tea drinks, as well as breakfast pastries to subsidize the lost revenue. It also allowed the public to use its restroom and hang out in the storefront without making a purchase. Now, that was a big deal. Do you remember when Starbucks was like, they had a barista yell at two black fellas that were doing a real estate deal? And do you remember that? And that didn't go over real well. I used to meet people at Starbucks all the time. I didn't think anything of it. I'd have a coffee just because. Might it would be a tea because I don't like coffee. But anyway, and as far as the bathroom thing, I mean, I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin on that. But anyway, it said the store also carried a selection of radical books, art, pins, T-shirts, and more for sale. The so-called anti-capitalist cafe shop and radical community space on stolen land, yeah, that is a weird one, raised eyebrows when it first opened, especially amongst conservative and supporters of capitalism. I don't know that I'm I do believe in capitalism, but again, crony capitalism is not good. And that's what we have in the United States, at least. It says locals also criticized what they said were high prices at the coffee shop, calling owner hypocritical for charging so much when he claimed to be against capitalist values and desires. Now, in my own thing, I see this all the time. If you look at a company like Patagonia, they charge stupid amounts of money for their clothes, and yet they feel like they have some sort of moral imperative. It's disgusting. Basically, I hate it. But that's the way the world seems to work now. It says, despite its closure, shop owner Gabriel Sins Fewer called his short-lived business endeavor a huge success that sparked debate, raised the blood pressure of conservatives, and experimented with living and working in ways that don't exclusively embrace the pure misanthropy of capitalism. Well, in Toronto especially, I mean, the tax code up there is just vicious. I mean, they're on their way to socialism anyway. It says, unfortunately, the lack of generational wealth, seed capital from ethically bankrupt sources left me unable to weather the quiet winter season or to grow in the ways needed to be sustainable longer term, he said in a statement on the Anarchist website. He ended a statement with a batch of expletives. Well, let's look at them. F the rich, F the police, F the state, F the colonial death camp we call Canada. Sims Fewer signed off. Huh. Is it possible? I'm just spitballing here. Is it possible that maybe he just didn't understand his audience? The group he catered to, needed some sort of affirmation, I would say, if you hate us, why are we here? Why are we giving you money for coffee when... And then the other thing is like me, I know this is crazy. I feel like, how much does a cup of coffee cost? Like 25 cents, 50 cents? So if I give the guy 50 cents, I'm insulting him. I'm paying what I can. But I should give him like $4? Well, I mean, what is the number? Like, how am I supposed to know what it is? And the answer to that is like we in our heads we comparatively shop anyway for everything. I mean, you know, like you see something like, I don't know, bananas, and they're like so much a bunch at this one store, and they're cheaper at a different store. Well, you're like, you compare in your mind, you're like, well, they're cheaper over here. I'll just buy it over here. Well, coffee's the same. I mean, if Starbucks is $4, you're not Starbucks, so is your coffee $3? Always get caught in my own mind of like, what does it cost to produce this product? And then that should be the price. I very seldom ever figure profit in there. And that's what always gets me in business. And I know I do it, but, you know, I don't know. Anyway, sad, sorry it went. I'm thinking about putting in like a transition window at this point where I just go, you know, like, here's the transition. So this next thing is, I hope it doesn't get me copyright struck, but I wanted to go over this because I thought it was interesting. Elon Musk, let me do this just to play here. Elon Musk is a very fascinating individual. And like I said earlier this week, I'm trying to get my head around this idea that he's fighting for free speech, but he's charging $8 a month. And then those voices get amplified over the voices that don't pay $8 a month. So it's like free speech except it costs $8 a month. But that's not true, okay? It's just the way I'm working with it in my head. I feel like if you've ever seen something that hasn't been played with by the algorithms, like it's very, very boring. Like it doesn't hold your attention. So, you know, maybe I don't want to know that Aunt Kathy passed away, like in my feed. Maybe I just don't. Maybe that's okay if it goes away. But that feed being replaced by a post that says like, you know, aliens invaded the planet and they're in our government. I mean, it's difficult for me. So anyway, I wanted you to see this interview. I'm going to try and tee it up. Oh, didn't mean to do the sound there. I gotta do. Well, wait a minute. Maybe I can do it. I don't know if you're going to hear it, but what? Let's see here. I just want to. You need to check this out. Wait a second. Let's see. I need to do this a certain way. I gotta go here. I didn't do that very well. I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. And if I do that, so if you don't remember, like he got in trouble for saying that George Soros reminds him of Magneto. And then people said that he was anti-Semitic. This was just like yesterday or the day before. So let's continue. I don't know. By the way, I don't know if you have the sound. I mean, I should have checked that, but I didn't because, you know, things. So here we go. Yeah, I think that's true. That's my opinion. Okay, but why share it? Why share it? Especially, I mean. And so here, the reporter, David Faber, he's pretty decent. I mean, I used to watch CNBC all the time. I don't watch so much now, but you know, like we live now in I don't feel like 30 years ago I knew what the executives of a company were thinking. And they certainly weren't tweeting it out. Like I didn't know the CEO of McDonald's and what he thought about anything. And so I didn't really have to worry about their politics. Now, I feel like I know what everybody's politics are. And it makes me not want to buy products sometimes. I'll be honest with you.
Why share it when people who buy Teslas may not agree with you? Advertisers on Twitter may not agree with you.
And so he's saying, and so what the reporter's saying is look, you're damaging your own business by speaking your mind, okay? And to me, this is like a warning. You know, be quiet or you're going to lose business. Now, I'm in a space where I have like 3 people that watch my live stream, and they're from all over the world. And so I don't really think that it's going to keep me from being able to sell or buy homes here in St. Louis. But I'm positive that people, when they don't know who I am, will watch a live stream to find out a little bit more about me, and they will make a decision based on what they see. So if you see me one night like emotionally unstable, that's probably going to hurt my chances of getting that listing or that buyer. So I am cognizant of it. As far as for my political beliefs, I don't really feel like I fit in with a pattern enough to really call myself one thing or another. I try to look at issues objectively. I wouldn't call myself an independent. I have a set of views, but they're not really part of the Republican or Democrat Party. Plus, the Republican Party is just a terrible, terrible group of people, and the Democrats are equally terrible. So it's not like I really want to be aligned with either party. So I do think about what I'm going to say. Sometimes things slip out. Sometimes they don't make sense. I've said from the beginning, I have a right to clarify comments I make if they don't go well, and that's kind of where I'm at. So let's continue.
Why not just say, hey, I think this, you can tell me, we can talk about it over there, you can tell your friends, but why share one?
So this idea is, and I hate to interrupt a bunch, but I don't want to get copyright struck if I do. It just doesn't seem good. But this idea is it's the reporters basically saying it's okay for you to have views. You're just not allowed to share them with a larger community like Twitter. Like you have, I don't know, 90 million followers. They all see this stuff. You should just tell your best friend, one of your ex-girlfriends, one of your girlfriends, one of your kids. You just shouldn't put it in a place where everybody can see it, which I think is not good. I don't agree with that. If someone's, a terrible person, I'd kind of like to know that ahead of time. And so watch this.
You absolutely are, but I'm trying to understand why you do, because you have to know it puts you in the middle of a partisan divide in the country. It makes you a lightning rod for criticism. I mean, do you like that? People today saying he's an anti-Semite. I don't think you are.
No, I'm definitely. I'm like a pro-Semite, if anything.
I believe that probably is the case. Yes. But why would you even introduce the idea that that would be the case?
I mean, listen.
And so if you saw what he said, I didn't find it anti-Semitic in any way. You can say someone's a terrible person or they're like something or somebody and not throw in anti-Semitism. I mean, it was so weird. I've seen that move a couple times with Soros in general. It's like, it's very strange. And so, I don't know. I want to get to this one point.
We don't make this a George Soros interview.
No, God, no. I don't want to at all. But what I'm trying, even came up with in the annual meeting. I mean, do your tweets hurt the company? Are there Tesla owners who say, I don't agree with this political position, and I know it because he shares so much? Or there are advertisers on Twitter that Linda Yaccarino will come and say, you got to stop, man. Or, I can't get these ads because of some of the things you tweet.
And so now he's going to make this really long pause. And I would just say that is the premise right? The question is the premise right? Are people really keeping him from, are people really not buying Teslas because of something that he says? I don't know. So now he's going to sit. Now he's going to sit and ponder this. And it's weird, by the way.
I'm reminded of Stephen the Princess Bride.
Now that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted you to see. Now, I don't know where he is on the richest men in the world or richest people in the world space right now. I have no idea. But he was pretty far up there. Who is buffering? Oh, man. Well, thank you for that. Anyway, I just, like, if you're that rich, okay, then you shouldn't, you're not, you've got what's called FU money, okay? You don't care about, you just don't care. If he loses $1 billion, does it really matter at this point? Oh. So I just found it interesting. Like, we've gotten to a point where people think that that you shouldn't say a word. And I've always been the opposite. Oh, thank you, Clint. Like, if you had a choice, okay? Now everything's not always crystal clear, but if you had a choice between an executive and an organization that said all these rosy things that he or she did not believe themselves, but said it to pander to the employees, to pander to the customers, or you had a CEO that's like, this is stupid. I'll just say what I want to say. And if at least you know where you stand, if you're an employee in that organization, you don't have to agree with the executive, but at least you would know, like, hey, this is what the guy said, and this is what makes sense. Now, I want so much to know what people are doing and thinking in an organization, because I feel like it would help me to do the things that I'm supposed to do to be successful. To pander and pander and pander and pander and to lie. The guy from the bank the other day, or from today, he's being hit for not knowing if they were hedged or not. Why did Roku have $450 million in that bank anyway? Why weren't they investing in treasuries? There's plenty of questions. There's plenty of reasonable questions from an executive, but I just, will there be an organized boycott of Teslas? Like, let's just look at it from my perspective. I can't afford a Tesla. So it really doesn't matter what Elon says. I'm not getting one. I don't even pay the $8 on Twitter. I don't have that. I don't feel like. I just think it's a very fascinating time. And we're being shown so much. There's so much out there that we didn't have before. And they try to hide it, and it doesn't work as well as it used to. I just wondered what you thought. So that's that. I think now, like I said, my transitions are terrible because I've been gone for a long time. Let's get in some real estate tweets. I got to do this one, though, differently because I did it. There we go. Okay, this is from Steve Harvey. I have no idea who Steve Harvey is. It says that he's an unapologetic believer in the value of home ownership from both an economic and societal perspective. Well, I don't really. Is anybody like anti-home ownership? It says a few weeks ago, News Lambert started putting the spread between the 10-year Treasury and the mortgage rates on his mortgage rate movement post. Why? Because he's smart and wanted to bring your attention to it. Over the past 50 years, the spread averaged 1.2 basis points. If that was the case today, the 30-year mortgage rates would be about 5.29%. The spread right now is 313 basis points. And look, that's wild. And they've talked about that. The Fed's talked about that. They're like, we've got the rates pretty reasonable, but we're getting this we're getting this spread between, our rates and what's being seen in the marketplace. And the answer to that is, I think that there's just so much risk. There's so much risk. And so, I don't know. You tell me. Next, we got Darth Powell. Now, look, I've been watching used cars like a hawk because I want one. And then this is from Darth Powell. It says, subprime auto loan delinquency hits the highest level since the great financial crisis. I've heard anecdotal stories about what's going on with the loans, that they're so underwater with the loans, the auto dealers, that they're like somehow tacking on like the value at the end of the loan so that they don't have to go and try and get the car. I don't know. I can't explain it well enough to explain it, but my thought is that the consumer is quite squeezed. And my proof of that is if you look at the banks that have failed, they were told to invest. They could invest in like 4 things, and one of them was mortgage-backed securities because they were quote unquote safe. Well, somehow the Fed or nobody else figured out that when the rates, when they raised their own rates, that that they'd have to pay on that debt, and those would make those securities almost toxic, and that only the biggest of the biggest banks could possibly overcome that. Which makes you wonder what the plan for the Fed was all along. Was it a plan to steer regional banks to larger banks that are too big to fail? Is it just incompetence? I don't know, but I mean, like, take your credit card bill. I don't know if you pay yours every month. I don't know. Maybe 2 years ago, you look at your credit card bill, you don't pay it in full, and then you get a little interest charge. It's like $2. You're whatever. Now look at it. It's not $2 anymore. And then what we're seeing in the car market, in the used car market, I believe there's 50% fewer vehicles that are $20,000 and less in the market than there were since 1998 or something, some weird number. But if you're only making so much, okay, and things are expensive, and the only way that you can afford it is credit, and then that credit is also expensive, you were already in a bad spot anyway when you had to do, in theory, wealthy people use credit better than poor people, right? But I don't know that that's always fair, because the poor people don't have any way to play the game with credit because they have nothing. You can't float credit when you don't have any. It's like if you owed money on a credit card and could transfer everything to 0% one time only, that's great. But if just transferring it and you have no way to pay it anyway, it doesn't do any good. So how many indicators do you have to have before you finally say, look, things aren't great, okay? Or are we just going to keep going on until, when does it stop? We saw freight numbers now. We're not getting our freight like we used to. There are truck drivers sitting around and can't deliver goods because there aren't any goods. There's no reason. This is really not, anyway. I'm not trying to alarm anyone. I don't want to be an alarmist. I'm just saying, gosh, it seems like something's going on. Mm-hmm. Here's another one about Darth Powell. It says, and this is pretty vicious. It says, every cycle the rich fail as the Ponzi unravels. Every cycle the taxpayer bails them out. Every time the politicians pretend to scold them with no punishment. Every cycle the rich retire ridiculously wealthy so the next generation can do the same. Just saying. I see a lot of that. This here, thought this was interesting. This is from Tracy Alloway. She has a podcast. I've never heard it. U.S. commercial real estate prices fall for the first time since 2011, according to Moody's data. Now, this was some like big revelation, like, oh my gosh, can you believe that commercial real estate prices fell? Like, that never happens. I'm more like, so? I mean, things go up and things go down, right? Is that really that big of a deal? I mean, if you're saying that this portends to worse things, okay, like more bank failures, okay, fine. But just, and why do we assume, like, one of the weirdest things in my whole life that I still run into is people tell me that real estate appreciates 6% per year. I actually have agents that say, well, you bought this house 2 years ago, so it's now appreciated 12%. Really? Where did you get that? Like, under what circumstance? Buy real estate because it always goes up. I've had the unique, what is the word I'm looking for? Experience of failing at many real estate investments. Like, I totally know how you can lose money at real estate. So I don't know what to make of that. I just wanted to bring it out. And this is the last tweet for tonight. It says, do you think it's possible for Homes.com to become the second most popular home search portal after Zillow in just a year? Now, I don't think so, because I think Realtor.com will be the second one. But my issue is, does it matter? If you're the market leader like Zillow, do you really care who's number two? I don't. All right, now we're done with tweets. We're going to get to this one article now. Look, I'm going to set it up like this. I think the debt ceiling arguments are manufactured. I think they're totally manufactured for the public to consume, so that we can sit there and say, what do you mean you can't not spend money? Like, why do they even have? They always raise it. As long as I can remember, they've raised it. It's not really an issue, other than they just keep raising it. It's not like they're going to not raise it. And then they say, well, in the Democrats' position, will always be like, oh, you're trying to cut senior citizens' benefits, okay? And then the Republicans are going to say something like, well, no money for NPR. And it's just like, people have no money and have no opportunities, and the school system's a joke, and we're going to talk about defunding NPR in the context of the debt ceiling. And by the way, if you're a Republican, you're just going to talk about it anyway. You're not going to do anything about it, because you never do. Anyway, let's go through it. It says, by the way, I don't know that I'm going to read the whole thing. I don't know anything right now. It says a default on the. By the way, I don't know who this person is. Okay, she covers the intersection of housing, mortgage, economics, and politics. So if you read this, it's like, oh my God, if we don't raise the debt ceiling, if we don't keep spending money, you're going to get higher mortgage rates, which will hurt home sales. You've already had 7% mortgage rates, and we're going to worry about higher rates. Like, you're already trying to crush the asset bubble that has been created by the Fed. It's like the problem is created by the federal government, and then the only person that can solve it is the federal government by doing something fiscally irresponsible. It's just a weird argument. It says a default on the nation's debt, if Congress is unable to raise the federal debt ceiling in the coming weeks, would boost mortgage rates by at least 2 percentage points and cause a slump in home sales, as costlier financing puts real estate beyond the reach of more Americans, according to Jeff Tucker, a Zillow senior economist. Now look, I would argue that real estate has been pushed beyond the reach of more Americans right now. So what happens if it's worse? While it's still unlikely the federal government will fail to pay its bills, the chances have increased in recent weeks because of an ongoing stalemate in Congress. Moody's Analytics said last week the chance of a debt default now stands at 10%, up from a previous 5%, the research firm said. Now look, They're gonna come up with a solution, and then they're all gonna pat each other on the back, and it's all gonna be great, except for you're gonna be the one that's holding the bag. That's what's gonna happen. I already tell you what's gonna happen. It says, any major disruption in the economy and debt markets will have major repercussions for the housing market, chilling sales and raising borrowing costs just when the market was beginning to stabilize and recover from a major cooldown of late 2022. Says Zillow's Tucker. I maintain to you right now that up until maybe the last 2 weeks, I was getting beat out on multiple offer situations on every house we put an offer in on. And I have to hear about how there was chilling, it was that the market was cold last year. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is obscenely stupid. It's just like, it says, and now maybe that was the case in Phoenix. Maybe that was the case in Las Vegas. I don't know, but it wasn't the case where I'm at and where I'm doing business. It says the average U.S. rate for a 30-year fixed home loan would likely rise to 8.4% in the coming months from last week's 6.35% as measured by Freddie Mac. That increase in borrowing costs would cause home sales to slump by 23%. Now look, if you hit that on the nose, good luck. Good luck for that. What we're doing now is we're forecasting things, and forecasts are best. Let's see how that really goes in the future. It says, while the U.S. unemployment rate would likely balloon 8.3% from last month's 3.4% as the economy entered recession, Tucker said. Well, what do we think of as full employment? I mean, we've always thought, the economists have always said, about 5%, unemployment is a strong, healthy market, is a strong, healthy economy. So it would be a self-inflicted disaster, Tucker said. Well, yeah, sure. But maybe the Fed raising rates at a crazy rate or at a historic rate is also a self-inflicted disaster. Maybe not negotiating on the debt ceiling 6 months ago was a self-inflicted disaster. Anyway. Jarrett Seberg, the housing policy analyst for Cowen Washington Research Group, which I've never heard of, views Tucker's estimates as possibly too conservative. Oh. If you don't pass this debt ceiling now, it's going to be even worse than that. Our view is that the Zillow report may be the best case scenario, as our concern is that credit markets will freeze up if there's default. So I've been seeing that the credit market in cars is already, in used cars, is already drying up. 2 places aren't lending anymore. I don't know. But there's just going to be more. This is the problem with free money. There's a cost to it, and now we're going to get to pay it. It says comments made by former President Donald Trump during a CNN town hall last week increased the chances of a debt disaster. Trump told CNN's Caitlin College a debt default could be nothing and might be just a bad week or bad day. Well, like when there's those spending bills? Yeah, I know. I agree. I'm putting that one on there. I would like to see the math on those predictions. And, yeah, I agree. 100%. Let me get back to my thing here. It's like, if you've ever, maybe 2 years ago, they couldn't balance the budget, or that's not they don't balance the budget. They couldn't get their spending bills done, and so for a week we couldn't use Fannie Mae or Freddie for a loan. And it was like, oh, it's terrible, the worst thing ever. Why can't the government get their stuff together? It's those darn Republicans or it's never the Democrats somehow. I don't know how they always avoid any sort of attacks, but actually I do. But anyway, this is all theater. And you're just the sucker that's at the theater at the wrong time, basically. You're not going to see a movie. You're just going to be sitting there. And wondering why. Because it's ridiculous. Anyway, it says, this stands in stark contrast to remarks he made while he was in the White House. Well, what difference does it? He's not in the White House now. Who's in the White House? Whose problem is it? Is it Trump's? You managed to take an article about Trump. He's not even in office. This stands in stark contrast to the remarks he made while he was in the White House on July 19, 2019. Trump described the nation's obligation to pay its bills as a very, very sacred thing in our country and added, I can't imagine anyone ever thinking of using the debt ceiling as a negotiating wedge. Well, it's always used as a negotiating wedge, and maybe you should. That's dumb. That's just stupid. It says, with razor-thin Republican majority in the House of Representatives, even a few holdout inspired by Trump's remarks could doom a chance to come to agreement over the raising the debt cap. Negotiations over the debt ceilings aren't about how much to spend, they're about paying bills already incurred. This is so crazy. This is so crazy. So the idea here is that Trump, who's not in office, okay, it's his fault because he said that it could be a big deal, it could be nothing at a town hall sponsored by CNN, okay, that he could cause there to be some holdouts. It could be because that could be it's not who's in charge now. It's not Kevin McCarthy in the House, okay? It's not anybody in the Senate. I don't even know who's running the Senate. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but it's pretty bad. It's not Joe Biden's presidency because let's be honest, we know that's not just one person. That's an administration running the show. So anyway, it says we continue to view a default as unlikely, but that is premised on our belief that politicians realize how dangerous a default would be for the economy. The problem is that, unlike in prior fights, not every political leader agrees. As we heard from this week from former President Donald Trump, it's why we cannot rule out a default. So we're just supposed to raise the debt ceiling every time. And why is it taking so long, I guess is the question. It's so insulting. It's so insulting. It says, while economists agree, and then whenever you see an article and it says when everyone agrees and it's a whole profession, okay, just know that it's bull. Just know that it's bull. Like, that a failure of the U.S. government to pay its bills would be a recession-inducing catastrophe. They don't agree on the X date, meaning a day the default would begin. Wow, this is one of the most awful articles I've read. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen puts the month as June, and the earliest potential day is June 1st. And by the way, what if it's June 2nd? What if it's June 4th? What if it's not even in June? What if it's in July? You know, what the hell, right? I mean, what is she? It's okay. The U.S. Treasury said in January it would use extraordinary measures to move money around and delay a default as long as possible. Well, I do that every month. I get no awards. No one asks me for speaking engagements or pays me, okay? And no one listens to anything I says with any sort of clarity or belief that it's true or care. I'm not Janet Yellen. It says Goldman Sachs economists estimate the U.S. will likely exhaust its cash and borrowing capacity by late July. Zillow puts the default date as almost Zillow. What are they doing? What are they doing? They're not now. They're involved with the debt ceiling negotiations. Almost certainly by August, depending on the flow of income tax receipts this spring. Oh my God! It says it's impossible to predict with certainty the exact date when the Treasury will be unable to pay all the government's bills. Didn't we say that up here? It was up here. That was the economists agreeing. Every single day Congress does not act, we're experiencing increased economic costs that could slow down the U.S. economy. So now it's the debt ceiling negotiations that are slowing down the economy and not the Fed, who's raising rates. I mean, make up your mind, right? It says the mortgage market is always showing sign of investor fear. Last month, the spread between the 30-year fixed rates and 10-year Treasury reached its widest in almost 40 years. When the spreads are wide, the mortgage rates that track the 10-year Treasury yield are higher than they normally would be as investors demand a risk premium. In May's first week, the spread was 2.9 percentage points, close to 3.07 in mid-March that marked the widest margin since 1987, beating 2.96 in late December 2008. That was the biggest spread of the Great Recession. Comparing Freddie Mac's weekly rate average with the 10-year Treasury data from the Federal Reserve, we are already seeing the impacts of brinksmanship. The U.S. economy hangs in the balance. Dramatic much? It's ridiculous. That was one of the worst articles. I mean, could you be a bigger cheerleader for getting the debt ceiling resolved than that article? if we don't pass the debt ceiling increase, seniors may not get their checks. Every time. And I didn't even know what to, I'm so sick of hearing about the debt ceiling like over my lifetime. It's just like, why do we keep doing this? It's insanity. Anyway, that's what I have for tonight. I'm going to go, I had a day. I'm impressed with, the fact that I'm still going at 11:10 today is big. I mean, it was long. I walked 7 miles to start the day. I just worked all day. It was just crazy, but now I'm getting ready to head on out. Hey, will I be here tomorrow? Well, I mean, why not? Well, you've been gone for a month. Well, I get that. I get why you would think that. Well, all I can say is, I think I'll be here tomorrow. Come hang. Come be a part of the show. Subscribe if you haven't. Follow me somewhere. Thank you for watching. I'll see you tomorrow night.